My name is Mark, and for 7 years I believed patience could turn a house into a family. I owned a small home security company. Nothing glamorous. 6 employees, 2 vans, endless emergency calls when alarms failed at 2 in the morning. I built it from nothing, and every dollar I earned carried the weight of someone's trust. When I married Laura, I welcomed her daughter, Hannah, into the home I had spent 15 years paying for. She was 9 then. I painted her bedroom the pale blue she chose. I installed shelves for her books, repaired the old bicycle she brought from Laura's apartment, and learned how to braid hair badly enough to make her laugh. For a while, I thought I was becoming her father. Not replacing the man who had disappeared from her life. Just becoming someone who stayed. I paid the mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, school fees, medical bills, and nearly everything else. Laura worked part-time, but I never treated the money as mine. It belonged to the family. At least, that was what I told myself. As Hannah grew older, something changed. The laughter disappeared first. Then came the eye rolls. The unanswered questions. The way she would look past me when I spoke, as though my voice were background noise in my own home. When I asked her to finish homework, she went to Laura. When I reminded her about curfew, she said, "Mom already knows." When I tried to discuss her grades, Laura would step between us and whisper, "Let me handle it. You're making her uncomfortable." So I stepped back. Then I stepped back again. Until I was paying for a life I was no longer permitted to enter. Laura saw the disrespect. She heard Hannah's tone. But she always found an excuse. She's tired. She's going through a phase. You're taking it too personally. Every excuse was another brick in the wall between me and the child I had raised. The final crack came on a Friday evening. Hannah had 3 friends over. I was in the hallway repairing a loose sensor near the front door when I heard them laughing in the kitchen. One girl asked whether I was strict. Hannah laughed. "Mark? He doesn't even count as my parent." The others laughed with her. I stood perfectly still, screwdriver in my hand. 7 years of school pickups. 7 years of doctor visits. 7 years of forgotten lunches driven across town, birthday cakes collected in the rain, uniforms washed after midnight, forms signed before sunrise. Gone. Reduced to a joke between teenage girls. I waited for Hannah to notice me. She did. Her face changed for half a second. Then she looked away. No apology. That night, Laura told me not to overreact. She was showing off. She said, "Teenagers say stupid things." I nodded. I did not shout. I did not demand punishment. I simply listened. The following Monday, Hannah placed a permission slip beside my coffee. "Field trip," she said. "It's due tomorrow." I slid it back toward her. "Your mother can sign it." She frowned. "She leaves early." "Then she should sign it tonight." "You always do it." I looked at her calmly. "Parents sign permission slips, Hannah. You made it clear I don't count." Her cheeks turned red. "That's pathetic." Perhaps it was. But I did not sign. After that, I stopped handling everything connected to her school. I ignored the athletic registration forms. I stopped paying for volleyball. I removed myself from the school email list. I no longer scheduled conferences, checked assignment portals, or reminded Hannah about deadlines. I did nothing dramatic. I simply stopped performing the duties of a man they refused to recognize. Within days, Laura's phone began ringing at work. The school needed medical forms. The coach needed payment. A teacher wanted a conference. Laura came home exhausted and furious. "You're being selfish," she told me. "You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt." "No," I said. "I'm respecting the position you both gave me." Hannah slammed her bedroom door. "You're trying to ruin my life." I stood in the hallway and answered through the wood. "I'm no longer managing the life of someone who says I have no place in it." The house began collapsing in small, embarrassing ways. Lunch money was forgotten. Deadlines passed. Equipment remained unpaid. Laura missed calls because she could not answer during work. Hannah expected reminders that never came. For years, I had been the invisible machinery keeping everything moving. Now they could hear the grinding. The real consequence came 3 weeks later. Hannah's class was leaving for a 3-day history trip. She had talked about it for months. Her friends had planned matching shirts. Her bag had been packed since Sunday. But the medical authorization form had never been submitted. The school called Laura repeatedly. Laura assumed Hannah had given it to me. Hannah assumed I would eventually handle it. I did not. On the morning of the trip, Hannah stood in the school parking lot while the bus pulled away without her. When she came home, her face was wet with tears and fury. "You knew!" she screamed. "You knew the form wasn't done!" "Yes." "You could have reminded us." "Yes." Laura stared at me as though I had committed some unforgivable crime. "How could you let this happen?" I looked at both of them. I didn't let it happen. Her parent failed to complete the paperwork. Laura flinched. For the first time, she understood what her silence had cost. Not just a signature. Everything. She tried to hand the responsibilities back to me after that. Forms appeared on my desk. Payment links arrived by text. School dates were added to my calendar. I deleted them. Kindness had become an obligation in that house. My sacrifice had become something they consumed without seeing the man behind it. Weeks passed. Hannah grew quieter. One evening, she found me in the garage cleaning tools. "I'm sorry," she said. I kept working. She waited for me to turn around. "I didn't know how much you did." "That was the problem," I said. "You never wanted to know." She began to cry. Years earlier, I would have crossed the room. I would have held her and told her everything was forgiven. But forgiveness offered too quickly teaches nothing. So I let the silence remain between us. I still cared about her. That was the cruelest part. But I no longer confused love with surrender. Looking back, I understand that respect cannot be purchased with mortgage payments, school fees, or years of quiet devotion. A man can empty his bank account, exhaust his body, and give away every piece of himself, but none of it can buy a place in someone's heart. Family is not made by blood alone. But it is not made by sacrifice alone either. It is made by people who value not only what you provide, but who you are when there is nothing left to take. I stopped begging for a place at that table. I stopped trying to earn a title they used only when they needed something. And for the first time since marrying Laura, I began living as though my own dignity mattered. Was I wrong to let Hannah miss that trip? Or was it the only way to show them that a man cannot be rejected as a parent and still be expected to carry every burden of one? The apology did not repair anything. It only changed the temperature of the house. Hannah stopped slamming doors. Laura stopped leaving forms on my desk. Meals became quieter, careful, almost formal. They watched me as though I were a damaged machine that might begin working again if they waited long enough. But I had stopped. Not because I hated them. Because I finally understood them. For years, I had mistaken dependence for love. I had believed that every request meant I was needed, and that being needed meant I belonged. Now I saw the truth. A man can be essential to a household and still be unwanted inside it. That realization followed me everywhere. It sat beside me in the van while I drove to service calls. It stood behind me while I installed alarms in strangers' homes. I spent my days teaching families how to protect themselves from intruders, then returned each night to a house where I had been robbed quietly for years. No broken windows. No forced doors. Just expectations. Laura tried to speak to me one night after Hannah had gone upstairs. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she never drank. "This can't continue," she said. I looked up from the invoice I was reviewing. "What can't?" "This distance. You acting like you live alone." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left in me. I handled this family alone for years. That isn't fair. "No," I said. It wasn't. Her eyes hardened. You know what I mean. I closed the folder. For the first time, I told her everything without softening it. I told her how many times Hannah had dismissed me while Laura looked away. I reminded her of the conferences I attended alone, the emergencies I handled, the fees I paid without discussion. Then I told her what hurt most. Not Hannah's cruelty. Her silence. You taught her that disrespecting me had no cost, I said. Every time you told me not to take it personally, you chose peace with her over dignity for me. Laura stared down at the table. I was trying to protect my daughter. From what? She had no answer. Because I had never threatened Hannah. I had never tried to erase her father. I had never demanded that she call me dad. I had asked only for the basic respect she gave teachers, coaches, and strangers. Even that had been too much. Laura began crying. A year earlier, her tears would have broken my resolve. I would have moved beside her, apologized for speaking too harshly, and promised to try harder. That night, I remained seated. I didn't realize how bad it was, she whispered. You didn't want to realize. The words landed hard. Good. Some truths should. After that conversation, Laura became more attentive. She corrected Hannah when her tone sharpened. She took responsibility for school deadlines. She began contributing more toward groceries and household expenses. But every change came after the damage. That mattered. Hannah approached me again 2 weeks later. She stood in the doorway of my office, holding a folded sheet of paper. There's a parent conference Thursday, she said. I waited. Mom has to work. I looked at the form, then at her. Are you asking me to attend? She swallowed. Yes. Why? Her face tightened, confused by the question. Because you always did. That isn't an answer. She looked down at the paper. For several seconds she said nothing. Then, quietly she said, because you know my teachers. And because you care how I'm doing. It was the first honest thing she had said to me in months. Maybe years. Still, I did not reach for the form. Hannah, do you consider me your parent? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know. There it was. Not cruelty this time. Truth. I respected it more than a desperate lie. Then I won't pretend for one evening, I said. Your mother needs to arrange it. She nodded and left. I heard her crying in her room later. I hated myself for causing that pain. But I hated the old version of myself more, the man who would have rushed in, repaired everything, and taught her that honesty changed nothing because Mark would always carry the weight. The conference was rescheduled. Laura lost half a day's pay to attend. The world did not end. That was the lesson neither of them had expected. Life continued without my constant intervention, but it became harder. Less convenient. More expensive. They began to understand that the comfort they once considered normal had been built from my time. My energy. My life. I changed other things too. I stopped working weekends unless the business required it. I joined a small gym near the office. I took evening drives without explaining where I was going. For the first time in years, I bought something for myself, a second-hand fishing boat from one of my customers. Laura called it irresponsible. I reminded her that the mortgage was paid, the utilities were current, and the refrigerator was full. She stared at me as if providing the necessities was no longer enough. Perhaps it never had been. Perhaps my real purpose in that family had been to surrender everything beyond necessity. The boat sat in the driveway beneath a gray cover. Every morning, I saw it before leaving for work. It became a symbol of something I had forgotten. Choice. One Saturday, I took it to the lake alone. The water was dark and calm. I cut the engine far from shore and sat beneath a colorless sky, listening to small waves strike the hull. No one needed anything from me. No phone rang. No form waited for my signature. For 3 hours, I was not a provider, husband, stepfather, or problem solver. I was simply Mark. The silence felt strange at first. Then it felt sacred. When I returned home, Hannah was waiting on the porch. She looked at the boat, then at me. Was it fun? Yes. She hesitated. Could I come next time? The question entered the space between us like a match in a dark room. I could have said yes. Part of me wanted to. But I had spent years mistaking every small opening for proof that everything was healed. I would not make that mistake again. Maybe, I said. Her face fell. I walked past her into the house. That evening, I heard her tell Laura that I was still punishing her. I stood in the hallway and listened. Laura surprised me. He isn't punishing you, she said. He's deciding how close he feels safe being. Hannah did not reply. Neither did I. For the first time, Laura had defended the wound instead of the person who caused it. It was late. But it mattered. Still, I knew something had ended permanently. Hannah's apology had not restored the father I had tried to become. Laura's regret had not returned the trust she had allowed to decay. They wanted the old Mark back. The agreeable man. The tireless man. The man who accepted crumbs of affection because he was afraid of losing the table. That man was gone. And as I lay awake beside Laura, staring into the darkness between us, I understood that the real question was no longer whether they would learn to value me. It was whether I still wanted to belong to a family that had needed consequences before it could see me. Would you have opened your heart again? Or would you have protected what little remained? The weeks turned into months, and the house settled into a new rhythm. Laura managed every school email herself. She kept a calendar on the refrigerator filled with deadlines, meetings, payment dates, and reminders that I had once carried in my head without anyone noticing. More than once I watched her rush out the door after forgetting another permission form or another parent meeting. She never complained in front of me anymore. She no longer had the right. Hannah changed too, though not in dramatic ways. She became quieter, more thoughtful. Sometimes I caught her watching me as I repaired a fence, balanced the household budget, or loaded equipment into my company van before sunrise. She was seeing work that had always been invisible. One Saturday morning I found her standing in the garage beside my toolbox. "I made coffee," she said softly. I looked at the mug in her hands. "Thank you?" She nodded, almost relieved that I had accepted it. Neither of us spoke after that. The silence between us had changed. It was no longer filled with anger. It was filled with caution, like two strangers crossing a frozen lake, unsure which step might crack the ice beneath them. Laura noticed it as well. "I think she's trying," she whispered one evening. "I know. Doesn't that matter?" "It matters. And trying doesn't erase years." She lowered her eyes because she understood exactly what I meant. Trust is not rebuilt by one apology. It is rebuilt by 1,000 ordinary moments that prove the apology was real. The real test came near the end of the school year. Hannah qualified for a regional academic competition in another city. It meant 2 days away, hotel reservations, transportation, signed releases, emergency contacts, and registration fees. Months earlier I would have organized every detail before anyone asked. This time I said nothing. Laura handled every phone call herself. She filled every form out twice to make sure nothing was forgotten. She drove across town during her lunch break because one signature had been placed in the wrong box. When she came home that evening, she dropped into a chair with a tired sigh. "I had no idea how much work this was." I believed her. "You weren't supposed to," I answered. "That was my job." She looked at me for a long moment. "No," she said quietly. "That was your gift." Those words stayed with me. A gift. Not an obligation. Not a debt. A gift freely given. The difference mattered more than she realized. 2 days later Hannah knocked on my office door again. "I need advice." I motioned toward the chair across from my desk. She sat down, twisting her fingers together. "I don't know which college to choose after graduation." I waited. She took a slow breath. I wanted to ask you because you're the one who always researched things. It was an awkward sentence. An honest one. For several seconds I simply looked at her. Then I opened my laptop. For the next hour we compared programs, scholarships, graduation rates, and travel costs. I answered every question she asked. When we finished, she smiled. Not the polite smile of someone asking a favor. The genuine smile I had not seen since she was a little girl. Thank you, Mark. She stopped. Then she tried again. Thank you for helping. I noticed the missing title. Dad. Stepdad. Parent. She chose none of them. Strangely, it no longer hurt. Respect had begun replacing labels. That evening Laura found me on the back porch. She wanted to call you Dad. I turned toward her. She told you that? Laura nodded. She said she's afraid you won't believe her if she does. I looked across the yard where Hannah was reading beneath the old maple tree. I wouldn't. Laura frowned. Why? Because titles spoken after consequences are easy. What isn't easy? Living differently. Laura slipped her hand into mine. For the first time in months, I didn't pull away. But I didn't squeeze back either. Healing had begun. Rebuilding had not. I had finally learned the lesson that should have been obvious from the beginning. Respect offered only after everything falls apart is valuable. But it never returns the years spent without it. And some scars remain, not because they still hurt, but because they remind us who we became while surviving them. Looking at my family that evening, I realized something unexpected. I no longer needed them to prove my worth. If they chose to walk beside me, it would be because they valued the man I was, not the burdens I carried. And if they failed again, I finally knew I could keep walking without losing myself. Tell me honestly, would you have trusted them again? Or would you have left the door to your heart only half open, no matter how sincere the apology sounded? Summer arrived again, almost a full year after the morning Hannah had watched the school bus disappear without her. The season felt different. Not warmer. Quieter. Our house no longer depended on me remembering everything before everyone else. Laura kept lists taped inside cabinet doors. Hannah entered deadlines into her phone. They had learned to carry responsibilities that once rested silently on my shoulders. I noticed every change, but I never pointed them out. Recognition earned too easily fades too quickly. One evening Hannah knocked on the garage door while I was cleaning fishing gear. I was wondering something. I looked up. What is it? She hesitated longer than usual. When did you stop expecting me to hate you? The question caught me completely off guard. I never expected that. You stopped trying. I set the tackle box aside. Those aren't the same thing. She frowned. I don't understand. For years I believed I could force a relationship by giving more. More time. More money. More patience. Every time it failed, I convinced myself I simply hadn't done enough. And now? Now I know relationships aren't built that way. She leaned against the workbench without speaking. I used to think everything you did was just normal. She admitted. I thought parents were supposed to do those things. They are. But you weren't my parent. There was no cruelty in her voice. Only regret. I remember. I know. The silence between us stretched comfortably for the first time. I was wrong, she whispered. I know. You keep saying that. Because you already apologized. Then why does it still feel unfinished? I smiled sadly. Because forgiveness isn't construction. It removes the debt. It doesn't rebuild the house. She lowered her head. I wish I understood that sooner. So do I. Laura appeared at the garage door carrying 3 glasses of lemonade. She looked from Hannah to me, surprised that we were talking without tension. Everything okay? Hannah answered before I could. We're trying. Laura smiled, but tears gathered in her eyes. She had wanted this moment for months. Maybe years. We sat together in the driveway until sunset, speaking about ordinary things. My latest security installation. Hannah's college applications. Laura's promotion at work. Nothing dramatic happened. No speeches. No promises. Just conversation. It felt strangely valuable. Later that night I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a folded photograph. It showed the three of us from our first family vacation. Hannah couldn't have been older than 10. She was sitting on my shoulders, laughing while I pretended to lose my balance near the beach. On the back she had written only one sentence. "Thank you for staying." I read it 3 times. Then I placed it inside the top drawer instead of putting it on display. Some memories deserve protection before celebration. A few weeks later Hannah left for college. Laura cried through most of the morning. I carried boxes into the dorm without saying much. When everything was unpacked, Hannah walked me to the parking lot. "I know you don't want promises," she said. "I don't. But I still want to say something." I waited. "I can't change who I was at 15. No. I can't give you back the years I wasted. No. But I can decide who I become next." For the first time since that conversation in the kitchen years before, I believed every word she spoke. I nodded once. "That's enough." She stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully. Then she hugged me. Not because Laura was watching. Not because she needed money. Not because paperwork required a signature. Simply because she wanted to. I returned the hug. Briefly. Gently. When we pulled apart, she smiled through tears. "Drive safely." "I will." As I walked toward my truck, I realized something important. I no longer needed to hear her call me Dad. Respect had become stronger than any title. Love, when it finally arrived, asked for nothing in return. Looking back now, I don't regret refusing to sign those permission slips. I regret waiting so many years before protecting my own dignity. Sacrifice without respect creates resentment. Boundaries create clarity. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for another person is allow them to experience the consequences of their own words. Only then can gratitude grow into something real. Today my home is peaceful. Laura and I speak honestly. Hannah calls every Sunday, not because she feels obligated, but because she wants to tell me about classes, friends, and the future she is building with her own hands. Our family survived. Not because I kept giving. Because I finally stopped. So let me leave you with one final question. If someone accepts everything you provide but refuses to value the person providing it, how long would you continue sacrificing yourself before choosing self-respect instead?